That connection just is not good the whole time. Okay, this looks like it's good. Oh no. Okay, the stream is back. I got the stream back up, and I apologize for the problems. Okay, you can just start asking the questions again, whatever questions, because I'm not sure what was up with that. Why my computer was spazzing out. I should just use my phone, right? Let's see if that works. Hello. Sorry about that. This is part 2 because the stream died. So I did a part 2. I'm not sure what's going on with, but it says my internet connection, everything is good, but it just died on me. Wow, the internet is wilding. I wonder if my sons are maybe they're doing it. Let's try this. Okay, let's get back to it. Yeah, maybe Skynet. I hope so. I'd rather get taken out by AI than these greedy capitalists. At least it's a more interesting way to go. Dying at the hands of some self-aware robot as opposed to dying at the hands of white colonizers. Yeah, so come on, Skynet, finish what the white man started. It's terrible. Thoughts on the Hong Kong? Separate Piece asks, what are my thoughts on Hong Kong? I did a whole segment on the Bro Diallo show on Hong Kong. I'm not going to rehash that, but I will say this. The Hong Kong protesters, if you look, these are right-wing protesters. See, we tend to think that protest only belongs to like left or progressive or liberal or righteous, but fucked up people can protest too. Nazis, before the Nazis took power, they were constantly protesting. They were arrested. Hitler got arrested. These are right-wing, mostly right-wing protesters like in Venezuela. And the way you can tell the difference, if you look at the protest movement in the Ukrainian protest from the late stages of the Obama administration, if you look at the Venezuelan protests, these are right-wing protests that are seeking to establish or sustain right-wing systems. So just like the Tea Party was a right-wing protest. So white people, just because you're protesting doesn't mean you're asking for justice, equality, and liberation, empowerment of oppressed people. We kind of get that confused because generally in the United States, when you see protesters, they're generally asking for something progressive or leftist or integrationist at the least. So the problem in what's going on in Hong Kong is if you look at the economic health index, Hong Kong is always at the number 1. The right-wing think tanks and foundations measure nations according to how capitalistic they are, how free market they are, how if they invest the nation's resources in allowing the capitalists to get rich, or do they invest the nation's resources into trying to support the working class and the common people of the population. Hong Kong is a capitalist paradise. And so China wants to exercise its sovereignty over there, but pretty much a lot of times what happens in China is a lot of corrupt capitalist billionaires, when they get into trouble or they get found doing dirt, putting toxic chemicals in children's formula to make extra profit, they run to fucking Hong Kong to get away. So China was like, Hong Kong cannot be a reservoir for escape. So if there are people doing crimes against the Chinese people and they're in Hong Kong, send them to the mainland so they can face prosecution. And that's what, that was the start of it. But the real core of it, because everybody in the street, of course, isn't a billionaire, isn't a capitalist. So what the capitalists have managed to do is the same thing they do in the United States, is tell the average citizen or resident of Hong Kong that their problems come from the government, when their true problems come from the capitalists. So you have people right now protesting the government. The government, all these migrants coming to the country. I can't get a job because of the government. And they say it's the taxes, and that all the things they blame on the government are actually the fault of the capitalist. So it's the same thing here when the right-wing people and a lot of left-wing people rise up against the government. They're actually fighting against conditions imposed on them. So the capitalist elite have mobilized the masses of Taiwan, telling them that their sovereignty is in check, is being threatened, when that's not the case. So the Hong Kong people are hungry, they're starving, they don't have options, they're under austerity just like we are here in the UK and all over the world. But it's easier to prop up the Communist Party in China as the big villain, as opposed to the wealthy people, the job creators, the innovative, beautiful people who deserved, who worked hard to get their billions of dollars. It's the same goddamn hustle. That's the thing where you say people are the same. There's so many overlaps, whether they're in Hong Kong or they're here in the United States. It's so easy to get people, especially people in more developed nations, to fall for the okie doke. So my thoughts on Hong Kong is the Hong Kong protesters, number one, they need to distance themselves from the right wingers within their protest who are calling for Trump to come and save them, or calling for the British Empire to come retake Hong Kong. They need to purge those people from the movement. Then they need to redirect their animosity from the Communist Party and direct their animosity towards the Hong Kong billionaires and capitalists and corporate elites in their country, just like we need to do in this nation. Right. Well, Hong Kong under British Empire, it was the communists who used to protest. There were major marches in Hong Kong under the British Empire, but those people were unionists. They wanted to reunite Hong Kong with communist China. So those were the communist protesters. The people in the street now are capitalists or pro-capitalist. So the people who protested against empire are not the people who are protesting against China. And the people who protest against China were not the people who fought against the British Empire. There's diversity there. So yeah, there were no major uprisings like we see today, but the communists were constantly fighting against the imperialism, which we should remember. My thoughts on universal basic income. I don't give a fuck about a universal basic income. A universal basic income will not do anything to change the reality of the class disparities. What is more important, if somebody is really sincere about economic justice, they will support a maximum wage. They will implement an upper income tax against. Under FDR, he proposed a capping income at $350,000, meaning that every dime you made over $350,000 would have to be reinvested in the society towards the social good. You can take your $350,000 and buy gold flakes or have a bronze statue made of your anus. You can do whatever you want with it. But above and beyond that, any money you get beyond that, because it was calculated, how much labor can an actual person do? Nobody's done a freaking $1 billion worth of work. Nobody's really done $1 million. And no matter how you value someone's work or worth, LeBron chasing balls or Bezos sitting by or Bill Gates sitting around writing code, that's not $1 billion worth of fucking work, no matter how you calculate or value labor. So what the basic minimal income is basically putting fucking a band-aid on a wound. It's basically giving temporary relief to desperate suffering people. And the middle income people will benefit mostly. The lowest bottom out income, they're not going to notice an appreciable change in that. So I don't I'm not against, like, if the basic minimal income came, I cash my checks, and I encourage everybody to cash their checks. But I would also tell them, whatever struggle you're engaged in, don't give up the struggle because they put this basic minimal income out, because that's a hustle. That's what it's meant to do, to demobilize the people, to what Malcolm X said, that it's there to help you suffer peacefully. You know, it's Novocaine. It's economic Novocaine. But Novocaine deads the pain, but it doesn't cure the disease. So what we should be fighting for, who are interested in social and economic justice, is for a maximum wage, upper income tax rate. The upper income tax rate, whatever we set, the minimum wage, I'm fine with the maximum wage being $350,000. Maybe some of y'all think y'all going to join the upper classes and you want more. We can set it at $15 million. But without a maximum wage, nothing you do for the people at the bottom is going to fucking matter, because even if we got an extra $10,000 a month, they're just going to inflate the cost. Then you go to Walmart, instead of an 85-cent loaf of bread, it's going to be a $150 loaf of bread. So you need a ceiling on it. You can't just put a floor on a economy. Okay, nobody makes less than this. You can't just put a floor on economy. You must put a ceiling on the economy as well. So I think it's just a hustle. And I think that what's his name, Andrew Wang, I think he's an asshole, because I think he understands this. Okay, 4411852 asks, Bro Diallo, what do you think of the difference between Pan-Africanism and African internationalism, and why do you choose Pan-Africanism? I think African internationalism was created by the Uhuru movement so they could take ownership of some shit. That's all. You know, and then the minute differences, and where they talk this bullshit about Pan-Africanism was started by Du Bois and the Niagara movement, and it's an elite movement. It was not set up by elites. Pan-Africanism was formalized and established by black intellectuals. But all revolutionary movements were set up by intellectuals. Fidel was a doctor. Che was a doctor. Fidel was a lawyer. Huey P. Newton was a fucking Huey P. was a law student. Bobby Seale was an engineer. Kwame Ture, a.k.a. Stokely Carmichael, was a medical student. Ho Chi Minh was a scholar. So all revolutions are conceptualized. Revolution is an intellectual endeavor. Revolution isn't about shooting guns. Revolution is about conceptualizing entire social, economic, cultural relationships. So they spared this rhetoric like, oh, Pan-Africanism was started by elites because these Negroes walked around in ducktails. But everybody fucking wore ducktails back then. So I think African internationalism was just a way for a egocentric organization and egocentric individuals, like the Uhuru movement, a cultist, if you believe Ghazi, a cultish type movement, is for their attempt to create further divisions so that they can take a faction. It's called factionalism. Like, if I become a Christian, I'm not going to have any power in Christianity. If I become a Muslim, I'm not going to have any power in Islam because it's too broad. So what I do is take certain ideas and principles from Christianity, and I go form Jehovah's Witness, or I go form the Nation of Islam, and I create a small faction or a separate faction, and then I get to say, well, I'm over this because I started it, when it ain't nothing but a bastardization of the original. That's all African internationalism is. And every time they get to nitpick, or like, well, we believe this and they full of shit, and it's not a debate for having. It's factionalism. And factionalism generally happens because you got egocentric motherfuckers that want to stamp their name on some shit and say, I started it. African internationalism is a bastardization of Pan-Africanism. And that's why I choose Pan-Africanism, because I don't need to go out and create. I can go create African universalism. And create, oh, Africans are universally, and this is Bro Diallo came up with this theory, and blah, 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 and get to put my name on it, and the African World Coalition is not, and so African internationalism and African Pan-Africanism, see, Pan-Africanism is elite, and Africanism is cultist, but my shit, that's all the fuck, it's some motherfucker's ego trip. Don't fall for it. Stay on the path. Hold the line, as they say in military struggles. Hold the line. We ain't got to go for that shit. That's my position on African internationalism. Fuck out of here. It ain't, you know. What do I think of the Jason Pope story? Jason Pope, who that? Oh shit! Fuck! Damn! I didn't know who Jason Pope was. Okay, I've been seeing this story, but I haven't really engaged in the story. But I don't think it says anything different. I don't think it greater informs or gives us any greater insight on our standing. You know, white people have always this is nothing new. I mean, I must admit I haven't penetrated that story. I haven't followed the details. I've only seen the headlines, and I didn't even know his name was Jason Pope. I just been seeing those disgusting pictures of that pasty fucking Urugu, that pasty fucking Neanderthal, all booed up with black women, scantily clad black women. But I haven't penetrated the story. But I don't think it says anything new, and I don't think it's transformative. It's pretty par for the course. I mean, white people have been flying. White men have gone all over the world, infecting African women, Polynesian women, Pacific Island women, Native American women, Caribbean women. They've been all going over the world infecting women they have colonized with disease for as long as since they first invented boats, since the Roman Empire. So it's nothing new. And you know, us falling for their old shit is nothing new either. So what for do? Okay. 4-4 asks again, what was your thoughts on the forgiveness push at Africans and the forgiveness push at Africans and the conduct of the family in the Botham Jean case? This is what we have to remember. Fuck the Jean family, Botham Jean. I mean, are they Haitian? What's their origins? I mean, where they from? Haitian? Where Botham Jean from? That sounds like a Haitian name. Oh, they don't say. Anyway, where y'all at? Okay, here's the thing about forgiveness, black people. It's kind of stupid for us to be hooping and hollering and debating about forgiveness. Black forgiveness don't mean a motherfucking thing. And here's why. And I'm glad I'm saying this here, because I was going to talk about this on the show before I had the scheduling conflicts and I couldn't do the show. But here's the thing about forgiveness. And remember this for the rest of your fucking life. Forgiveness means nothing without power to punish. Forgiveness means nothing without the power to impose consequences. I'll say it one more time, since we on here, we don't understand what the fuck forgiveness is. St. Lucia, okay, close enough. Caribbean. Forgiveness means nothing without the power to impose consequences. That means if you ain't got the power to do shit to me, who gives a fuck whether you forgive me for my wrongdoing or not? Right? Okay, let me give you an example. My son, he works a little job. He's still a minor. He's still my son. I still have authority over him. He might argue different. But let's say my son goes out and he buys a package of my favorite vegan cookies. And he brings those cookies home and puts them on the counter. And I come home and I see them and I eat all of them. And my son comes home and says, someone ate all my cookies. And I said, oh, those were your cookies? I didn't know. I ate them. And he's like, Dad, I forgive you. Okay. Because let's say you don't forgive me. What the fuck you gonna do? Ain't nothing you can do. Just go to your room, slam the door, be mad. You can mumble under your breath. Now he has the power to impose consequences on me because I am a person of conscience. I have consciousness and empathy, and I love my son. So it hurts me to see him hurt, or hurts me to see him upset, or I don't have the intent to upset him. So if I know I've upset him, I would like to make amends in my heart. So if he tells me I forgive you, it's actually he did a good thing for me, because I have the heart, the mind, the desire to be in peace and be in good standing. I care about what my son thinks about me. I want him to think highly of me. So he does have the ability to impose consequences, psychological, emotional consequences on me. And he has the ability to relieve me of those consequences. But if you're dealing with a motherfucker who's shown no compassion, no empathy, who has not only not shown us humanity, but has behaved in an inhumane, subhuman, savage fashion towards us for generations, the only way our forgiveness would matter is if we had them motherfuckers strapped to a guillotine and we were ready to pull the rope on that guillotine and we say, what? Oh, we're going to be bigger than this. Untie the motherfucker. Let him get up from the guillotine. We forgive you. That's when your forgiveness matters. So if we want to debate forgiveness, we got to debate power. Do we have the power to impose consequences on our oppressors? And once we have power, if we don't have it, how do we get it? And once we have it, how will we use it? Will we be punitive with our power or forgiving with our power? The Haitians had that power. The Haitians said, we don't forgive you. We're going to play soccer with your cranium. We're going to decapitate you and play soccer with your fucking head. No forgiveness. And all them slavers in Haiti were like, please forgive me for me enslaving you. So the Bantam Jeans family forgiveness means not a motherfucking thing, because it is the U.S. judicial system. That murderous Amber, she cared about whether or not the judicial system would forgive her. She cares about the forgiveness of her warden at a prison she's going to. She cares about the forgiveness of the parole board that she's going to see in 4 to 5 years. But she don't give a fuck about random black folks' forgiveness any more than fucking Zimmerman did. And if she had gotten off, she'd be out there showing her ass like Zimmerman, fucking autographing doorknobs or whatever. I don't know. Like he autographs fucking Skittle bags. So it's kind of sick to me about black people. Black people talk about we shouldn't forgive, and black people say we should forgive. Neither one of y'all motherfuckers matter unless we got the fucking power to impose consequences on people for fucking with us. So we look at shit from the wrong. We fucking over here when we should be looking at shit. We look at shit from the wrong way. And both of you wrong. That's why I didn't even get into that shit. It's coonery to forgive. But maybe if we had power to fucking impose consequences and we choose not to, maybe that would be a noble act. I tend to be a forgiving ass fucking dude. I'm very, very forgiving. You know, I'm a fucking tree-hugging, green, vegan, hippie type brother. That's just me. I tend to be a forgiving dude. Don't ask around. Just take my word for it. But I ain't forgiving no fucking body that I don't have the power to impose consequences on. That's why I say we don't forgive. Do you forgive me? I can't, because, you know, I'm not the one that's going to pass judgment on you. I don't own any prisons. I don't control the court system. We don't even enforce the laws or anything. So what the fuck difference does it make? Let's get power, y'all. And when we get power, then we can debate whether or not we're going to forgive people for what they did to us. I'm sorry, I kind of got stuck on that. 44 asks, what is the root of the gender war here in social media against Africans? And what is, I'm not sure what you mean by the gender war. Is it men against women? Is it gender non-conforming people against cisgendered people? I'm not sure what you mean by the gender war, or even if it exists. So maybe if you could give me more detail about that question. I'm not sure. I'm not going to assume which, because there's a lot of gender conflicts going on. So if you could give me a little more clarity, I'm not sure I can answer that just yet. Chris asks, do you feel that a nation/state is the best option for African people? And what are your thoughts on Nyeri Ujamaa in practice? I think that we will have to transition to a nation state. We'll have to make a transition to that. But ultimately, I don't ever talk about this. Ultimately, I am an anarchist. I believe that as we set up institutions of justice and balance, eventually the real job of the state is to make itself obsolete. And I think the need for the state, the bureaucracy and the apparatus of the state will eventually erode if we conduct revolution and we set up socialism. If you read most socialist thinkers, I don't care if it's Western socialism under Marx or Eastern socialism like under Nyerere or Nkrumah, most of them understood that the state is a transitional status, that they ultimately were anarchists because the purpose of the state is to dissolve hierarchies of a true state, is to dissolve divisions and hierarchies. You know, that's the purpose of socialism. And when you dissolve hierarchies, you don't really need the bureaucracy to rule over people because that's another hierarchy. So I think that we do need a state. And I think we need to define what a state. Now, a nation is here. A nation is a group of people's idea. Like the nation of America is not the territory of America. It's the concept of America, the ideal of America, the Constitution and the philosophies of America. That's the nation. That's the nation. The state is the physical apparatus, the borders, the courthouses, the infrastructure. That's the state. So we need a state and we need a nation as African people because we are at war with nations and states. And you cannot combat a state. So if you also look at the principles of guerrilla warfare, the principles of guerrilla warfare is to sustain yourself until you're able to set up a formal state apparatus, formal bureaucracy, and have a formal military to fight a formal war. So some of the more far leftist people don't like this concept. But yeah, Africans, we need a state. Not only do we need a state, we need what is called a supranational state. A supranational state is where you have a body, a governing body that supersedes all localities. So we need a supernatural state that will create an umbrella for all the various sovereign African nations and Black populations. So we need a Caribbean Federation, we need a United States of Africa, and we need a diasporic union to unify Africans that are not within Black dominant or Black majority states, but there are still Black, like Brazil, the United States, Africans in Western Europe, places like Brixton, where they will be the diasporic union, the Caribbean Federation, and the United States of Africa. And yes, they must function as a formal state, set up formal bureaucracies, currencies, and things of that nature. I don't think we can jump from oppression to anarchy. I think we have to go from oppression to resistance, liberation, revolution, construction of a just socialist state, socialist economy, and then the natural evolution to anarcho cooperation and voluntary cooperation. I think that's the proper path. But yeah, we need a state, a nation. So what do I think of the gender war between men and women? The gender war between men and women does not exist. What Black folks' conflicts are byproducts of oppression. I don't think that there is a gender war. Well, let me go back to your original question since you clarified. What is the root of the gender war here in social media amongst Africans, and what is the best way to combat it? Well, the root of the conflicts that we see between Black men and Black women is anti-Blackism. In fact, Monday shows, I was going to talk about the concept of a simp and a pick-me and anti-Blackism, and how anti-Blackism is what fuels that. So the root of the gender war between Black men and Black women is anti-Blackism on both parts, devaluation of African people, failure to recognize the intrinsic values and us valuing each other according to our status within our oppressor system, and what rewards and trinkets we can get from the system to demonstrate our worth, as opposed to recognizing the inherent worth of that. So it is our oppression and our oppressive states and the menticidal mindsets that we develop as a result. The best thing you can do to combat the gender wars, number one, don't engage. Become a pacifist. Like when it comes to between war with Africans against other people, you're active. But when it becomes between Africans fighting Africans, well, as far as the gender war. Now, here's another caveat for that. You join the side that's right. So if I see black men and black women bumping heads in the gender war on social media, and there is one side that is being rational and accurate in their assessment, and the other side's being irrational, then I will join the rational side and try to speak. And so you either try to communicate. Oh, thanks, John. You either try to communicate or articulate what is right and what is proper. So you either can be a sideline type and watch, or you can engage and say, no, this is wrong, that's wrong. So, and a lot of those conflicts. So adopting Western values, a lot of black men have adopted, and black women, it's not really, but a lot of black men and black women have adopted puritanical values in terms of the male's role in a relationship or society versus the woman's role. The man is head of household, the woman's subservient, and they look at women as literally living incubators and want to deny women their autonomy. But then you have a lot of men and women that also have adopted the materialistic value system in terms of ownership and valuing you not as who you are, but what you have. So it's a lot of warpness. And when we become conscious or revolutionary, pro-black, anti-white, or what you want to call it, we bring that shit with us. So the best way to combat it is either stay the fuck out of it and make sure you have healthy and mutually beneficial relationships with other black women and men, or if you do engage in it, make sure you are coming from a rationalist and Pan-African point of view. So if it's a brother who's speaking correctly and he's being attacked, support that brother. If it's a sister speaking correctly and she's being attacked, support that sister. So that's it. Carl says, Chris Hedges said that it is impossible to vote against the interests of Goldman Sachs. Do you agree? No, I don't agree, because it has happened. History has shown that it is possible to vote. Voting is different than governing. We get a little confused. Voting is just one part. So yes, you can vote against. I voted against the interests of Goldman Sachs, but I didn't win. I truly believe that Green Party has demonstrated that when the Green Party has not yet been compromised, and I think the Green Party hasn't been compromised is because they're not large enough or successful enough to warrant the attention to corrupt. It's just not worth corrupting the Green Party. So you can vote. Can you govern against the interests? That's the real question you're asking. Can you govern? Can you set up policy platforms and enact and carry out policies against Goldman Sachs? Yes, you can, but it's very difficult. If you go all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt and the Trust Busters, or the breakup of Ma and Paul Bell, there have been times in American history where there have been reforms to break up monopolies. There have been reforms to reallocate or redirect resources done. So yes, you can vote against it, and you can actually enact policy against it, and you can govern against it, but it's just a hard fight. You can't just vote and go home. So yes, you can. They can be defeated. I don't agree with Chris Hedges on quite a few things. I mean, he is a white man, so as hard as shit gets for him, shit only gets so hard for him. He ain't been down to the trenches. He always talks about when he lived in Camden, New Jersey, and he saw the suffering of black people, but he never says, I suffered like black people, which I respect him for that. But that's also something that needs to inform his analysis. That's also when he talks about violence. He says, oh, you can't vote against Goldman Sachs. It's also impossible. Violence is the worst thing. And whatever you do, you must be absolutely anti-violent. And then once you use violence, then the oppressor wins, which is bullshit. So his statements don't hold up against history. You can vote. I vote against them all the time. But can they get elected? That's another thing. And then once they get elected, the people who are against Goldman Sachs, can they govern? And that's another stage. That's another fight. So every step, it's a fight. It's a fight to get the candidates on the ballot. It's a fight to get the candidates in office. It's a fight to get, once the candidate is in office, to get them to enact the reforms. And then once the reforms are enacted, it's a fight to get the bureaucrats to carry out in good faith the reform. And then it's a fight to sustain the reform. It's a perpetual conflict. It's a perpetual fight. But there have been times, the fact that we ain't in shackles, The fact that we don't give birth to children who have to, by the time they're 8 years old, to go work in coal mines. The United States used to have child labor. The United States used to have set up that people who worked, when you worked for a company, they could set curfews for you. They could set dress codes for you, not just in the office, but they could set up dress codes. The company could pay you in their own currency so that you could only buy from the country. Look at the Pullman porters. So there have been reforms and there have been successes. Look at the labor movement and the triumphs of the various labor movements. So yes, you can vote, act, fight, and you must vote, act, and fight. But I think what Chris Hedges is actually saying is that voting alone won't fix shit. He also says, you know, you got to take it to the streets. So you got to protest. You have to do non-compliance and resistance, and you have to disrupt the functionings of the empire. So voting alone doesn't fix shit. But don't let him lie. Even if you take your ass to the ballot and you write in Fu Manchu, if you go to the ballot right now in the next Chicago election that's coming up and write in Bro Diallo and write me in as a candidate or write yourself in as a candidate, that's a vote. That's a vote against Goldman Sachs. So literally and figuratively, yes, you can vote against Goldman Sachs. Okay. Marx was a brilliant man. He just went about it the wrong way. Marx? I think you're saying Marx with the X. No, I don't think. Well, here's the thing about Marx. Marx was a scholar. He wasn't a revolutionary. And this is the thing, this is why black people, why we fuck up so much. We take our scholars and want them to be on the front lines. We treat our soldiers like scholars and treat our scholars like soldiers. We don't do proper division of fucking labor. People come to me all the time like, bro, Diallo, why don't you be a leader? And at the same time, they want you to be a leader. They want you to be a foot soldier. They want the general to be an infantryman. And then the infantryman, after he shoots 2 bullets, he thinks he's worthy of being a general. So actually, Marx did not carry out revolution. He was a scholar. So you can only judge him on his analysis. You can only judge him on his dissection of the economic history of the West and the development and predictions. And if you go read the Communist Manifesto right now, you swore he wrote it last week. It's one of the most prophetic, it's more accurate prophecies in the Communist Manifesto than there are in the Bible. I stand on that. Go read that shit. He predicted everything that's happening now. So Marx was accurate. Now, Marx's proposed solutions, that was for the revolutionaries to carry out. So yeah, I have a lot of issues with Marx, but he's one of the smartest white people. He's one of the most, and I think that was Marx's ultimate mission, was not to tell black folks or Asian or anybody else how to live. Marx's main goal was to humanize Europeans. That was his main goal. And there are still white Marxists and white communists right now still trying to bring some humanity to Western culture. But yeah. On race, Quadjo says, on race, given the embedded implication of status, class, etc., inherent in construct of race, do you think it's possible to solve the problems of race from within the paradigm of racial identity? Yes. And the way you solve because it's been done before. When the Haitians took power, this is an unknown part. When the Haitians took power, there were other white and non-African people who were subservient, indentured servants, or Shanghai people. And they came to the Haitian African revolutionaries and said, we want to join your cause and we want to pay fealty to your cause. So yes, once the reason why racism and race exist and is perpetuated is because it is extremely profitable for this system. So the moment you'll find, whether it's you and a white man face to face as individuals or entire populations and nations of people, white people fix that race shit real quick when the power dynamic shifts. So what will fix racism is black people getting power. How do I know? There used to be a popular saying in this country called, you don't stand a Chinaman's chance. You don't stand a Chinaman's chance. There was a lot of overt racism against Asian people. And now white folks like Asians are so intelligent. They value education. And China, well, China is a economic powerhouse. There was a time when there was very little to no Arab racism in America. There was a time when Ronald Reagan was president. The Mujahideen, which are the precursor to Al Qaeda, the Mujahideen came to the White House and sat across from Ronald Reagan. There are pictures of all those fucking neocons. Donald Rumsfeld and all them motherfuckers sitting there shaking their hands and bowing before the Mujahideen. They loved when the Afghans were fighting the communists. Ronald Reagan said that the Afghan Muslims reminded him of the founding fathers of America. And now Arab racism and anti-Arabism, anti-Islamophobia is rampant. So racism is about power. When Africans had power, the white man came hat in hand to Africa, and it wasn't no fucking racism. So white people have demonstrated the ability to fucking check themselves on this race shit. So we don't have to stop being Africans. We don't have to deny our phenotype, that we look different, we move different, we smell different than them. We don't have to dissolve the reality of race or elevate the racial identity. Only fucking thing we need is the capacity and will to do as much harm to them as they can do to us. Mutually assured destruction. And you'll find out just how quickly white people can get over their racial hangups. How they can get over, oh, come live in my neighborhood and all that shit. They fix that shit real quick. In fact, I know white people. I know personally, I've seen white people with my own eyes. They live in places like Oklahoma or rural America, and they move to a big city where it's predominantly black, and they fucking check their shit at the door. I've seen rednecks go from hipster, liberal, love everybody hipsters when they get surrounded by enough brothers. So despite the class status and all that other shit, as Kwame Ture said, black power. We need power. We want power. We will have power. And I guarantee you, once you have power, once we have collective power, not Jay-Z individualistic mimic of white money, fiat power, but true black power, you find out, damn, we got more friends than we ever knew. I don't even know if that answers your question, but that's the reality of it. Okay. Tab. 4-4 asks, I would say, okay, you're answering some. Okay, yeah, you can jump in and answer some questions. Okay, Quadano says, and the non-white people of the world, any racial identity is not only intrinsically disharmonious, but it's also a liability due to radicalism and liberation. I haven't seen that. People, maybe, shit, but I don't know. I know when people get power, all of a sudden, all the little racial slurs and fun people make of them fades away. When the Jews ran to Palestine and took that land over and built an army and got some nukes, you saw a lot less overt anti-Semitism in Western Europe and in the United States. Okay. Are we done? Are we done? Where are we? Any more questions? And if you're watching on Instagram, if you want to ask a question, you have to go to the YouTube live feed. I'm just answering questions that pop up in the YouTube feed. All right, thanks, Quanjo. And if I mispronounce your name, please forgive me. It's because I'm just not a well-traveled man. I'm not a worldly cosmopolitan man. I'm just a simple Missouri country dude. So I ain't too good with exotic things like some of y'all names. Chauncey, we need more facilitators. Listen to the right, fucker, and do as you're instructed. Well, I mean, if I took over an African country tomorrow, I'd be on some Idi Amin shit. Y'all wouldn't like me very much. I would not. Y'all not gonna do me like y'all did. What's his name? Who's that Haitian? Damn. Now I wish I never thought of that. My brain's about to bust because I can't think of this brother's name. I have to go look it up. Oh, Aristide. Y'all not gonna do me like y'all did Aristide. Aristide was a good, wholesome leader, a righteous leader. I'm gonna be like off with this. I'm gonna be like fucking. I'm gonna be like Idi Amin, because y'all, we gonna get shit straight. I just feel like operating within the paradigm versus outside the paradigm of race. Listen, we don't get to say race. Um, it's not up to us. The nature of the struggle is not dictated by those being attacked. It's really dictated by those attacking you. Now, if white people came to us and said, Black people, you suffer because you're not hardworking, you're not disciplined, you don't have the right value system, and that's why you suffer. And if white people were honest about that, then we would get our liberation through hard work and proper values. But they were lying. So they dictate the nature of the struggle. Now we can say, oh, I hate the fact that I have to own guns, or I hate the fact that I have to group up with Black people to the exclusion of other races. I don't hate shit. I love whatever's going to work for us. And we got to ride with this race shit. Thank you, Ja. We got to ride with it. It is what it is. I have an old saying, say this to yourself, you know, it's more better to win than to be right. Or no, let me say it in another way. Let me quote, because he said it better than me. What's his name? George Jackson said, good men better learn to love cutting throats as much as evil men do. Or as Muda Baruka said, the snake's going to have to eat whatever's in the frog's belly. Regardless of whatever quotation is best for you, we're going to have to get our fucking hands dirty. And we're going to have to not say what we want to do, we have to say what needs to be done. So if we got to posse up behind racial barriers, then so fucking be it. It is not our fault that shit is this way, but it is our responsibility to correct this shit. At least for us. So I wish we could be. African people, we are the most xenophilic, meaning loving of strangers, accepting of strangers. We are the most xenophilic race of people on the face of the fucking earth. And it's hard to get us to act some other way. But if that's what it takes to secure the survival of our youth, then so be it. I'll be as xenophobic as the most racist cracker, if that's what it takes. To gain power, should we slow down or stop smoking herb? See, Owen asked, should we to gain power? I have to tell y'all, I have never smoked weed a day in my life. I've never smoked a joint or took a dab. I have never ever smoked weed or any type of narcotic. I don't drink alcohol, and I'm what they call a teetotaler. Now, the reason for this is because my mother suffers with drug addiction, and I have relatives who've died of drug overdoses, and I have relatives who've been, and close friends of mine who have been incarcerated either due to consuming or distributing drugs. And drugs have been a fucking negative, extremely, from a childhood. I remember just fresh out of diapers, living in a home that was full of cocaine and drug paraphernalia and syrup and volume. And drugs have always been around. So I just really had an aversion towards any mind-altering substance. And I know some of y'all, the herb, it's a natural herb, it's not a drug. Fine. But I know all the drug and hustlers and pimps. There was the crack was right there, the coke was right there, and the weed was right there. I know it's not a drug, but it keeps drug company. It hangs out. So me personally, I just said I'm never fucking with that shit. Now my wife has told me that as I age, I'm gonna have to start using medicinal and marijuana, and find maybe when I'm 50, 60, 70 years old, I'll hit my first joint or whatever. But I have seen people who smoke weed recreationally and consume drugs who have the intellectual and physical capacity to carry out revolution. I ain't gonna say no names, homies, brethren out there, but I know revolutionaries whom I respect and whom I admire from past and present who use weed. So even though I can't speak personally, like, yeah, you can be a revolutionary because I've never used the shit, I know of people from historically and currently who are able to smoke weed or use it in other capacities. And so I would say yes, you can be a revolutionary, and I don't think that we have to abandon consumption or medicinal or recreational use of marijuana in order to be liberated or to be revolutionary. I don't think that you have to be. But y'all just let me, if I'm there, just open up the windows, let the air circulate, because I'm not partaking. So I think historically, yeah, the evidence says that no, we don't have to. Has capitalism undermined democracy? No, because democracy in this country was only allowed for the capitalist. The people who set up this democracy and the democracy that they claim they based it on in ancient Rome was for the landed white male gentry. Landed white male gentry. So democracy does not mean everybody. Democracy means the people who own the society. And if you read Plato, he also said the people who should be able to participate in democracy are the people who are in high. So it's not a democracy of all people. It's Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Bill Clinton, and these elite wealthy white men sit together and they vote amongst themselves. So it's never been white or European democracy has never been everybody's included. They didn't even want to include their own fucking women. So capitalist democracy means the landed white male gentry. That was during the revolutionary era and the founding fathers. But now it's the elites. So the elites, the Walmart family, the Walton family, the DuPonts, the Rockefeller families, the Bill Gates and the Bezoses, and all these elite people, they fight amongst themselves. Now they allow us to bicker amongst ourselves, but they do have divergence. You know, you got pro-Trump faction of the elites and you got anti-Trump faction of the elite. And that's where democracy dwells, in the upper echelons of the economy. So you can have capitalism with democracy, but you can't have true democracy, which means all people, power to the people under capitalism. Capitalism allows for plutocracy or oligarchy, which is small few. But that's always been the case, even before, when the United States was more of a feudal society or a mercantile society, before capitalism, especially modern industrial capitalism, took a foothold in the United States. It was never, even prior to capitalism. And, you know, the Greco-Roman democracies all predate capitalist, you know. And then you have like places like Switzerland that are democratic and non-capitalist, and they still, the white elites run shit. So depends on, capitalism allows for some diversity in rulership, but it's only amongst the elite. We were never included. And if the United States became socialist in its economic, because socialism and capitalism are economic systems. So even if it became, there are racist socialist states. Cuba, for instance. Cuba is a racist state. You know, and Fidel took steps to try to curb it, but he didn't make much headway because he had other shit. He had a U.S. blockade and all that other shit going on. But, you know, yes, you can have capitalism. But what's actually, there was never democracy for the masses. So I guess you can't. I say no. No, you can't. Okay, let me just give a more direct answer. I'm sorry. Because then I'm playing with words here. No, you've never had democracy under capitalism. What democracy we had was an illusion. You can only have oligarchies or plutocracies under capitalism. So capitalism isn't destroying democracy because there was never fucking real democracy in America at any time. So capitalism may destroy our illusion of democracy, but there was never fucking democracy in this country. Oh, that was good. I wish I had just said that. That'd have been cold-blooded. Let me just erase everything I just said and go back to your question. Is capitalism destroying democracy? No. Capitalism is destroying the illusion of democracy because there was never democracy in America. Damn. Fuck. Delete all that other footage. That should have been my answer. I got to get better at answering these questions more cleanly. Chauncey, Dr. Sabi docked to his knees because he couldn't feel the itch because he was high as hell. Oh, poor Dr. Sabi. Yeah, Dr. Sabi loved weed is the most hybridized plant in the world. And he said we shouldn't eat hybridized foods, but we can smoke hybridized herb. Sabi was a fraud. And actually, my last time I got into a fist fight, I was fighting with a Sabi disciple. We was going back and forth, and the dude hit me up, grabbed me by my fucking collar. That shit, and it caught me off guard. 'Cause one minute we talking about whether or not broccolis should be eaten, and next thing I know, he's trying to choke me out. So we went at it, man. We threw down. But he's not with Sabi anymore. He joined the Nation of Islam. Thank you. I appreciate you, Owen. Where are we? Oh, what's a good beginner's resource for someone trying to gain a better understanding of economics? I have to get this. If you want to understand economics, you want to look the best economist in this country for breaking down capitalism and alternatives to capitalism is Richard Wolff. And he has several good books, but just go Google Richard Wolff, and he's the economic democracy let me find it. Democracy at Work. There it is. So you go to the Democracy at Work, and you can get access to his text and all of that. And so if you just want a cursory, non-complex, meat and potatoes understanding, and who asked this question? I'll put it right here. But this is the best right now. Democracy at Work is probably the best source for economic insights, purely economic. So TC, I put it in there in the links. I shared a link to the Democracy at Work and the writings of Richard Wolff. He was actually a mainstream economist who, yes, Democracy at Work. So that's probably the best and most direct. Razda says, if you were to relocate to another country, which would it be? Or which nation is closest to fulfilling your ideology? Wow. If I was to relocate to another nation, that's two separate questions, by the way. So if I was to relocate to another nation, it would probably be Nigeria. Nigerians are known as the giants of Africa. I think if any nation, prior to Mandela coming to power, I would have said this about South Africa, but Mandela fucked that up because Mandela is one of the biggest sellouts of this generation or of this century, black sellouts. But if I was to go to another country, I would go to Nigeria. I would try to establish a foothold in Nigeria. I'd probably live in Lagos, and because Nigerians are the giants of Africa, and as go Nigeria, so goes the rest of Africa. And I think Nigeria has the best potential for uniting and creating a revolutionary Pan-African reality on the continent of Africa right now. But geopolitics shit changes, and if I had to go somewhere else and I had the means, the economic and material means to relocate my family, it would probably be to Nigeria for work. And then you say, which country or which nation is closest to fulfilling? That's not Nigeria. Is far from fulfilling my ideology. But if I had to go somewhere and do the painful, thankless grassroots struggle that I'm doing now, and I get a lot of love from Nigeria. I got a lot of people who listen to my podcast from Nigeria. So, I wouldn't be a stranger there. But the country I think came closest to fulfilling my ideas, Cuba under under Castro, Venezuela under the Bolivarian Revolution, Bolivia is another nation that it came close. Haiti under the Lavalas movement or the Aristide short rule before the coup d'etat there to overthrow the Lavalas movement. So, but the problem is when my ideas, the nations that begin governed by the way I think the problem is they get overthrown. The economic hitman, John Perkins. So it's hard to say a nation because every time a nation that I support emerges, it gets subverted. I'm just looking at the bookshelf to see if that book is over there. Every time I think of a book, and I think, oh, I just saw that. I gotta organize my books. Shout out to Chauncey has sent me some wonderful books that I'm working my way through now. But Confessions of an Economic Hitman is a book. So there are many nations that start to implement, but then they get blockaded. They become terrorist nations, and there's also parts of Spain, the Madrigal Cooperative. So it's not really a nation; it's more of a region that is run socialistically. So the under the Madrigal Cooperative, there's a lot of little pockets of socialism and pockets of rebellion and resistance. The Niger Delta region, where they've got armed resistance against defending the world's ecosystems. So, you know, or the Congo under Patrice Lumumba. So, I mean, those are the places I would say. But every time you say, well, they're fucked up now because every time they start to do right by their citizens, foreign incursions happen, blockades happen. Okay. Ja I says, how will we ever be able to take control of resources if we ever were to really have a revolution? I feel like the current power structure will never let us control our own resources. No, they never will let us, but we have to take control. The way we take and secure control is number one, we make colonization very expensive. You have to engage in ongoing sabotage and subversion of the system. And as you engage in ongoing sabotage and subversion of the system, you make colonization too expensive. And then, as Che Guevara said, you need several Vietnams going on all over the world at the same time to make the empire overreach its resources. That's happening right now, but not deliberate. So no, they'll never give us anything. They didn't give us emancipation. They didn't give us freedom from Jim Crow. Everything we got from these motherfuckers, we shed our blood and got it. But here's the thing, Jai. If you look at the overall timeline of African existence, this is how long we've been here for longer than anybody. This is the full timeline of African existence. This little bitty space here is the time we spent in oppression and slavery. It is an unnatural state for us to be living outside of our ecological and our ecological milieu or our ecological existence that we live for the vast majority. The majority of the time that Africans have been on this planet, we have been in control of our resources. We have been sovereign. We have been in power. So this state of white rule was a brief detour. And everywhere you look, white power is eroding. It is collapsing. Some places it's being deconstructed. Other places it's being outpaced. Other places it's falling. In most places it's falling under its own corruption. The issue we have is not if the white power structure will fall, it's when and under what conditions. Our real problem is not to say because African people have gone faster than any other race of people. Other people have come under slavery and colonization. Ireland was under direct colonization by the British for over 800 years. And still, Africans were under direct colonization for less than 100 years. And we're already seeing steps of the erosions of neo-colonization from the West, but it's being matched by a rise in Eastern colonization, but that's a whole nother discussion. But what I'm saying is, if you take a historical point of view, and if you're not looking at this shit based on today and tomorrow, but you're looking at this shit based on generations past and the trajectory towards forward, shit is actually good. Our real problem that we're facing that no other African has to face is the utter destruction of the planet's ecosystem. So what we have to do is accelerate our liberation struggle so that our liberation struggle can outpace the destruction of human ecosystems and the biosphere of the planet. But yeah, the white rule has been the shortest rule. The Chinese dynasty goes back 5. The United States isn't even 300 years old. The United States isn't 300 years old. This is a brand new country and it's already eroding. Oscar Wilde, it took me a while to figure out who said this. But Oscar Wilde said the United States is the first country in existence to go from barbarism to decadence, never even reaching civilization. So the United States is already eroding. That's why Trump is president. They literally have a functional illiterate as president of this nation. This empire is not very clever. It has no longevity. The only thing this empire has been better than other empires is it is the most destructive empire. It is not the longest lasting. It is not the greatest. It's not even the most expansive. It's only the most destructive. But it's also one of the most invulnerable. So if we can wake up our people and reorient our people, we can be done with this shit within a generation or less. So we do have a very, very painful and hard struggle against us, but it's not one that is implausible. I'm an extremely practical dude. And if this revolution wasn't viable, I could sit up and eat peanut butter cups and play the Xbox until oblivion comes. The only reason I'm doing this is because it's the most practical, realistic thing to do. Liberation is very real and it's very possible, but it's going to take a lot of hard thought and even more hard work. That hard thought has to direct that hard work. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I'm just trying to think of what billionaires do with all that fucking money. No, actually, what I was thinking about is there's this candy where you can have a mold made of your anus and they'll form it into chocolate, like chocolate anus candy. So that's where I got that from, because rich people do that kind of shit. So I'm not crazy. Here it is right here. Edible anus milk. So you think I'm making this shit up? I don't make up nothing, bro. Diallo, I'm not. My imagination. If my imagination, there you go. You can go get edible molds of your anus. So yeah, that's what rich people do. I ain't got money for that. I have to wait for the Justin's peanut butter cups to go on sale before I even can buy those. Because I can't pay $2 for one package of vegan candy. So I have to wait for that to go on sale. That's the only time I eat it. Ask my wife. So I didn't come up with that shit. Do you think community policing will reduce crime rate? What I predict, because we had community policing. Remember the Crips and Bloods and all that shit? Was back in when during the exodusters and the Great Migrations, when Africans moved out of the deep rural South and the agricultural South into the industrial centers of Detroit, Chicago, Harlem, Strivers Row, Oakland, and parts of Los Angeles and Compton. When Black people spread across this nation, we started doing community policing. And those community policing went from defending the community to preying on the community. So community policing will only help us if it has the right foundational ideology. A lot of these motherfuckers walking around our communities with guns, they have right-wing evangelical value systems. They don't have the right ideology. A lot of them are just like these NRA gun nuts. They love guns. They love the authority that guns give them, and they're out there to flex their muscle more so than they are to defend communities. So the Black Panthers said, when you join the Black Panthers, before you got a gun, you got a series of books. You did ideological cultivation. You understood the values, principles, and ideologies that govern the organization before you got a gun. A lot of these groups say, if you're a man, you ready to strap up, then come along, where there is no ideological cultivation. The same thing happened with the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X said, before, when the Islam was a smaller organization and people were trickling in, they had enough time to each time somebody came in from the streets or from the prison to cultivate them and to educate them. And then they would put them in a bow tie and put them on the street. But then when they started flooding in, it became a quantity over a quality issue. And then the same people that were out there defending us became cults who were out there seeking vengeance for the Prophet Muhammad as opposed to protecting the masses of people. So the community policing will only work if there is a Pan-African ideology and a system and protocols for both educating the brothers as they come in. So if you have a gun club and you don't have a fucking study group, you're going to end up forming a cult that will prey upon our people. So the intellectual, ideological, and even social, emotional cultivation and healing of our people needs to be partnered with the militarist development. I've tried that. I've tried to form urban militias in New York, Kansas City, and in Chicago. But I could never. You have the dudes that want to come out and do the militarist training. They want to spar. They want to shoot. They want to use slingshot. But when it came time to do the study and the cultivating and the humane aspect, they didn't want to do that shit. A gorilla must be both a healer and a killer. You know, you need medicine in the murder. There's healing in the killing and medicine in the murder. You got to be able to do both. So I don't have a lot of confidence in these community policing thing because a lot of it seems like bravado. And I've been proven right. I ain't gonna name no names like the Balu Gone, these brothers marching through the hood and with guns, the biggest guns and RBG flags with all this rhetoric, and the police come knock on your door and drag you out in your own underwear. That don't make sense to me. And so and then you encourage other people. Guns without training are a bigger threat to us than no guns at all. And I ain't anti-gun. I got my little one of the first things I did when my wife and we went from just hollering at each other, from me putting the Mac down, to us being in a formal relationship before we got married, before we had kids, but we were together, exclusive. One of the first things I did was take her to get her gun license. One of the first things I got her after buying dinners and movie tickets, but one of the first like major purchases I made for her before I got her a ring or any of that is I bought her own little, revolver, 38 revolver. So I'm not anti-gun, but consciousness is more deadly and valuable than a gun. Okay. Ras Das says, what if all the conscious woke Africans were to relocate to the same state so that they would be a numerical majority, similar to the way Liberians would have done? Again, if black people all grouped up together, it doesn't fucking matter. Look at how Liberia, when the Africans went back to Liberia, they went there with, look at the Liberian flag. They went there and started acting like crackers. The Liberians who came from the United States took those people's land. They did like Israel, and they started enslaving and discriminating against the natives in the Africans, and they went around dressing and acting like Europeans. And we have places where Africans are the political majority. In Atlanta, you go to Atlanta, and black people have the numerical majority there in Atlanta, and all they can do is build strip clubs and make shitty fucking rap music. Yeah, I think Atlanta rap sucks. That low IQ booty music, man, that shit is whack. But that's my opinion. I know y'all love Outkast. Y'all can have it. But it's quality over quantity. So we can get numbers. So that's that whole thing, like, yeah, we got to birth black children. And this is a quality issue, not a quantity issue. So I don't think anything. If we can get a bunch of conscious revolutionary Pan-African black people together, huddled up, that'd be great. But if you just get black people and we get together, only thing they're gonna fucking do is build mega churches and Tyler Perry studios. Shit. Again, I'd rather us be dispersed and conscious than be huddled up and unconscious. Libertarians? Did I read? Oh, I'm sorry. I should read the whole question. I'm sorry. There's a documentary on that shit where they tried to go to New Hampshire. They're actually fighting. They're not unified because you got the native New Hampshireans, and even all of like New Hampshire and the Atlantic coast, and all over the places where they tried to create these white ethnic enclaves. They always end up, instead of raising up white power, they just get into bickering with each other or bickering with the the resident long-term residents. So I don't really see how that's a power base. The proper name of a people must relate to the land, history, and culture. Racial identity is rooted in STEM. Yeah, I agree. We are Africans, but we black too. There's a use and a time and a place for everything. I'm sorry, I thought you said Liberians. Sorry about that. Next time, I'll stop scanning. I mean, I'm tired. We've been at this. How long we been doing this? An hour. Oh, that's not that long. Oh, you said conscious woke Africans? If I had a 50,000 conscious woke Africans, I would probably have some of them form a headquarters power structure, but I'd have the other half of them dispersed in the larger communities. I'd send them out as revolutionary missionaries, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I think if it was conscious, yes. But if we all know the same shit, then we don't want to kind of start a choir. But there's benefits and to that though. But yeah, I think. Do I think Derek Bell is correct about racism being permanent? No, I don't think Derek Bell is correct about that. But you should read Faces at the Bottom of the World. One of my favorite nonfiction books is Faces at the Bottom of the World, or semi-fiction. I don't know how to classify that book. But Dr. Bell was wrong about that because racism hasn't always existed. People were not defined by their phenotype. There will always be prejudice. There will always be some form of manifestation of xenophobia. And when racism becomes too costly, people will abandon it. We've already seen that many times. People are only racist because it is beneficial for them to be racist. But when racism becomes too expensive, then racism will recede. But now, again, racism is not about how I feel or how any white person feels. Racism is a system. Racism is a system that gives preference to some people based on their phenotype and imposes oppression on other people. So racism is over when African people are no longer vulnerable to racist. So the moment we're no longer vulnerable to racism is over. Racism is different. That whether or not somebody's racist is fucking irrelevant. You think the Chinese sitting on top of their nukes, sitting on what, $3.2 trillion of US debt, give a fuck if white people are racist against Asian people, white people do this Asian and talk that ching chong racist bullshit? You think the Chinese if I was sitting on $3 trillion of my enemy's debt and my own intercontinental ballistic missiles, I don't give a fuck what they think. So racism will be over when Africans have the power to hold racists accountable. So no, racism isn't permanent. That's the same as saying black oppression is permanent, which it isn't. I disagree with him on that, even though I admire Dr. Bell. He was a bit of an integrationist liberal, but you can't have everything. Other than NYC, what region of the country do you think produced the best hip hop? Oh, well, because you know I was gonna say New York. You know what I'm saying, son? I got Timbo flip flops on right now. After New York, I would say the Bay Area, Oakland. The Bay Area, Oakland. The Hieroglyphics crew, Delta Funky, Homo Sapien, Boots Riley, and the Coup. And remember, way back in the days, the Mau Mau Rhythm Collective. So I say Oakland, California. Oakland, California was a hotbed of progressive and conscious hip hop. Even Def Jeff. So Oakland, California, until Oakland got overshadowed by Compton and Long Beach, all that gangster self-hate rhetoric. So number one was Oakland. Okay? People sleep on that. Oakland hip hop, but that's where Oakland, that's where the Panthers come from. You know, come on. So I would say Oakland. Third, I just have to say this, Kansas City. Kansas City, Missouri. That's right, boy. Go check out the Popper. I'm KC. The Popper, the Veteran Clique, Tech Nine. I say this, and I don't mean it because there are some Southern, people don't know this. People think Dead Prez is from New York. because that's where they broke. Dead Presidents from the South, they Florida. So I ain't saying it's all bad. Goody Mob, you know, soulful and still standing. Goody Mob made some good music, better than Outkast. I think the Goody Mob was better than Outkast, even though they were all part of the Dungeon family. You know, so there's some Southern hip hop that I like. Skip Coon. Oh, Skip Coon from Mississippi. That brother slaps. Is that what them young people say? Skip Coon slaps. I don't know why he ain't big, but Skip Coon, if you don't know, you're gonna thank me. Y'all gonna inbox me, y'all gonna come on my feeds and be like, bro, thank you for putting me on the Skip Coon. That's how dope he is. You're welcome. So, but I say Bay Area, Kansas City, people sleeping on Kansas City. And parts of the South. But of course, New York hip hop, nothing surpasses it. But then now it's tragic because New York started imitating. What's up? Who's on the phone?
Mom.
Is she coming home?
I think so.
She's on the phone right now?
Yeah.
I can't even reach the phone. Don't be nosy. Don't be nosy. Oh. Step off, sucker. Nosy, man. I don't come up. I'm gonna bust in your room next time you talking to some little sticky girl. Close the door. Get out of here. Hello? Yeah, I'm still doing the show. Oh, wait. You got some tea? All right. I'm gonna have to sign off. My wife got some gossip. Who you talking about? Chauncey? Nah, Chauncey's watching. Now I'm messing with you. Who you got some tea on? And you're not on the air. They can't hear you. All right. Just wait till you get home. I'm about to sign off. All right. How come you don't give out vegan recipes like Kidi Obiawadu? Oh, that's a good question. I don't take pictures of my food either. And like King Dita, he I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. Let me tell you why I don't. Let me tell you. For years, my wife and I were in the vegan food business. We opened a cafe in Brooklyn, New York, back in the early 2000s, like right after the towers fell. We had a cafe. It was a bookstore, and we wasn't making no money selling books. And I was embezzling a lot. I was getting high off the own supply. I would take half the inventory home with me. We had Think Bookstore. So we opened a little cafe in the back to sell vegan food in the back of the cafe. And that was helping supplement to keep the bookstore afloat. I want to do that here, but I don't want to, because that was a partnership. I would like to do a cooperative bookstore cafe here. And so when we moved from New York to KC, we said, man, we was making a lot more money selling the food than we was the books. So then we opened up a restaurant, and we called Cafe Seed, and it was a full-scale vegan restaurant, and we had a real popular brunch. And then people would always call, do you guys cater? Do you guys do special events? So it was like, no, we didn't. But then we started doing birthdays and catering and special events. And so then when we moved here, we were going to expand and open up our second location. But that we got caught up in the lawsuit because our contractor and our commercial landlord had forged some paperwork, and we got embroiled in that. And so we ended up going from having a restaurant to having a catering business. And so we were catering, doing everything. It was a vegan, organic catering service. And then we started putting packaged products in the stores, and we were all the way out to Matson in the south suburbs, and all the way on the north side, we had products. And so we were doing vegan food for over I say from like 2002 up until like 2006. No, it is 2016. So I just kind of, I ain't saying I burnt out. We just started doing other shit. So that's all. We just started doing. I would like to get back to it. I love feeding people. I like putting out food. We converted so many people. We had a vegan restaurant. It was a really high-end vegan restaurant, the first vegan restaurant in the history of Kansas City, the very first. And it was Black-owned. And we were creating really a whole community of Black eco-entrepreneurs. And then when we left, now all the vegan restaurants are white-owned, and there's no more presence of Black, green, or Black eco-entrepreneurialism. So it's kind of sad when I go back to Kansas City, I can't even find shit to eat. But I guess that's why I just kind of, the food shit was just so heavy in my life. I just taking a little break. But Kidi Obiawadu, it's funny that Kidi's known for vegan recipes. Kidi is one of our most preeminent scholars. I put Kidi up there with Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben and Chancellor Williams. I think he is a treasure that we don't value enough. So, you know, shout out to Kidi Awadu, the Conscious Rasta. And if you don't follow him across social media, you're doing yourself a disservice. Shout out to Baba Kidi. And now he's Chef Kidi. He got into it. So he kind of went from scholarship and community work to veganism. And I kind of went from veganism to, you know, so, you know, you kind of go in and out of shit, you know. But I'm tired. There's a lot of shit going on, but ain't a damn thing happening. As a Pan-Africanist, do you believe in the primacy of Africa in our struggle? I wouldn't say primacy. I say centrality. So yeah, it kind of, Africa is the nucleus or the core, but I don't believe in primacy in a lot of ways the ADOS tries to paint it. You know, I don't get into the more African than thou type thing. So I believe in the centrality of Africa, but not the primacy of Africa. You know, and especially in the diaspora, I think that Haiti is as valid and as central to Pan-Africanism as any country or the total continent of Africa. So no, not primacy, but centrality. A playlist. What type of playlist? Because I do have some playlists on YouTube for hip hop, reggae, black rock. So what type of playlist? Like a scholarly playlist, or let me know what you mean by that. Can countries develop industries without capitalism? Yes. In fact, even capitalist countries develop industries without capitalism. Capitalism is a distribution system. It's not a development system. So industry requires cooperation. So the steel industry and the architectural development. So if the natural resources people don't communicate with the academic institutions and say, look, we have a plethora of steel and we have copper. So when you're educating people on how to engage in architecture, you want to focus on the materials we have available. So that is a coordination and a cooperation. That is socialism. That is not fucking capitalism. When you go to work, they don't tell you to compete against your coworkers. They tell you to work with in a symbiosis. Capitalism, the only fucking thing capitalism is extracting wealth. It justifies the taking. They say Trump is a builder. Remember? Trump can't what? Can you imagine Trump with a fucking hammer? Think about all the Trump towers. How many of the fucking Trump towers did Trump build? None of them. Trump is not a carpenter. He's not a mason. He's not an electrician. He's not a fucking plumber. He's not even a halfway intelligent human being. Only thing Trump has is a piece of paper saying, I own this. So yes, all industrial development is done outside of capitalism. Capitalism comes in and extracts the wealth. Imagine if you lived in a building where the plumber was competing against the instead of working cooperatively with the electrician. You would die. You would be electrocuted. Imagine if the stonemason was competing against the fucking whatever, the carpenter. That house wouldn't stand. So all the different professions that come to build industry, to build homes, to build a car, they all work together and coordinate. Imagine if the engineer or the designer was competing against the welder and making a car. So everything that is of value in our lives comes as a result of cooperation and people working together and sharing their knowledge and coordinating their efforts. And then the fucking capitalist comes in and takes all the fucking money. Bezos. What the fuck does he deliver? He don't make shit. He don't deliver shit. He don't do shit. He just owns the intellectual property, which he didn't even build that. The motherfucker didn't even make the internet. Who made the internet? We did. People funded the internet. DARPA. Socialism created and funded and laid the infrastructure for the internet. So yes, you can have major industry. Remember, communist Russia beat the United States to the moon? Communism is a better means of development than capitalism. Socialism is a better means of sustaining and creating industrial, or what I call ecological societies. We need to dwell within ecosystems, not economies, but that's a whole nother discussion. But yes, capitalist distribution is a system, but capitalists don't make shit. Workers make shit. Capitalists take shit. And on that note, my wife is coming home with dinner. She was at the eco conference. My wife is making dinner, so I'm gonna. And she said she got some tea for me. See, we ain't like, we don't go out, we don't get to kick it like y'all do and hit the streets. So all we get to do is crack jokes on people, but it's all in good fun. But anyway, I want to get ready for when my wife comes, and since she's bringing some food home, I'm gonna go set the place for her, put some food out, so we can have dinner late as hell. 10:49. Wow. Anyway, thank you for joining. Thanks for everyone that made a contribution. The Bro Diallo show will be live in effect on Monday, and there are no more breaks in the schedule, except I'm going to Oakland for a mass incarceration conference. So I guess there will be a break, but that's not for a few weeks. But the Bro Diallo show will be back. I'm sorry for all the days I make. I know that these Q&As don't make up for the broadcast. Thank you to my Patreons. You can become a Patreon subscriber. If you're not a, a Patreon supporter, you can subscribe to YouTube. Please share the content, help get the word out. We need revolutionary, radical, uncompromised, unbought, non-corporate media. All right? So share this, and y'all have a good evening. Have a safe weekend, and I'll see y'all Monday morning, Bro Diallo show live. And Chauncey, I'll be calling you Sunday. I think we're supposed to meet. Oh, you need to tell me if you're available to meet Sunday. So I see y'all soon. Y'all have a good evening. Peace. Put some apple. This moves a lot. That's Jay Dilla. I'm just trying to play us out. Good night, y'all. We going to bed, gonna put down and rest your head. Now I ain't gonna charge you something. Good night. Thank you. I enjoyed being here. Thank you. And good night.